coming up.
I didn't touch the guitar for a couple of years, really. After I left the band, I was like, what for? What am I doing?
Greg, thank you for joining me. I've really been looking forward to this, and I was really glad that you responded to me when I reached out because I didn't know what to expect. As we jump into it, where does today's recording find you?
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Eric. I'm always surprised when anybody wants to talk to me in the first place. Today actually finds me in my real estate brokerage's podcast studio. So I figured, why not do the podcast from here?
Awesome.
I guess for those that don't know, I'm Greg. He's a musician, real estate agent, dad, man of many hats these days.
When someone asks you, what do you do? Or tell me about yourself, describe yourself, something of that nature, what do you say nowadays?
I usually go with musician. It's, I guess, in my core who I am.
You said, I think it was real estate office or real estate company. So real estate plays into, that is something you've been doing for a long time. But the way that I became familiar with you, at least from afar, and I think a lot of people, is because you were the founding guitarist of the band Zebrahead, and you have, at least as far as I understand it, you sort of, got out of that and have been doing a lot of other things since then. But I reached out in part because I've continued to follow you. You still play music, though I think different styles. So when you say, if you were to simplify it down and say you're a musician, do you think of yourself as differently as a musician nowadays than, let's say, when you were touring the world or when you were playing in a garage in a band?
I would say I don't view it differently now versus when I was in Zebrahead. Like, I would still say I'm a professional musician. I think when I played in a garage, though, I would have thought of it differently, as I was still aspiring to earn a living at making music and playing guitar. So it felt a little, I don't want to say amateur, but like you're, I don't know, playing high school baseball, dreaming of being in the major leagues, kind of situation. I guess is how I'd put it. So I guess when Zebrahead got signed is probably when my perception of me being a musician changed.
Going back to, sort of playing in a garage, whether you were playing in a garage or some sort of practice space or playing in your bedroom or something, was there something that first drew you to the guitar?
I just fell in love with the sound of it from a very early age. I grew up listening to my dad's music, classic rock. His favorite band is the Beatles, but the classic rock station, he had Zeppelin albums, Pink Floyd, Doors, and all those bands are really guitar heavy, as kind of like the focal point of instrumentation, and the songwriting. And so I think that's just what I just thought it was the coolest sounding thing.
When did you start playing, and did you start on acoustic, electric? Did you aspire to be, I suppose when you were a kid, Van Halen probably was big, I'm guessing. Where did you start, I guess, is the question.
I think my very first lesson, it was October 22nd, if I remember this correctly. And it's like 2 weeks before my birthday on November 2nd. My dad had gotten me like a pawn shop from a $20 acoustic nylon string guitar and lessons. And he just got me a cheap guitar for my birthday, not knowing if I was going to follow through with it or, play it, or let's see what happens. I don't want to spend any money until there's some commitment for my kid. And as a parent now, I totally get that.
Yes, I can sympathize with that for sure.
Like I said, my dad's I grew up with my dad's music, and the first bands that I loved that were like I found them, they were mine, was Van Halen and Metallica, and like Eddie's my musical hero, 100%. I don't think I'd remotely play like him. There are things that he does that I'd totally rip off, but like in general, I don't think I really sound like him. But at the same time, I loved his way of looking at the instrument of, well, here's what somebody else did it, how they did it. How can I tweak that, make it my own, but like take that idea and kind of transform it into your own and make it your own thing rather than just straight up copying somebody.
Right.
And that goes for even like his um like he was very good at not just playing, but he put a lot of things in the guitar itself to change what the instrument is. Like nobody potted pickups before him. Like he was just like, how does this instrument work? What if we change this? Well, I don't like that. I want to do it like this. And I always thought that was interesting to be like, "Well, why does it have to be like that? The instructions say to use this pedal like this. What if I want to use it like that?" So I was like the inventiveness of it as well.
Do you remember when you started to think that guitar or maybe music generally was your thing?
I don't know if there was a like it 11, 12. I had lots of dreams of ridiculous pipe dreams that kids have. I'm gonna be a major league baseball player. I'm gonna be a professional golfer. I'm gonna be a lawyer, which was far more accessible thing to be. Um, but yeah, professional musician was always on that list. Um, and I don't know if I ever thought it was a maybe seniorish year in high school, like 16, 17. Um, before in my mind, I was um, starting to think like, hey, I'm pretty good at this. Maybe there is a chance of this. I'm definitely not going to happen for baseball. Probably not golf either. Um, so I guess it was the last of the pipe dreams that I had that kind of hung on.
Around that time frame or leading up to it, did you play other instruments or other music? Were you playing in school? Were you playing largely solo? How was your music career or experience developing up to that time?
Before I took guitar lessons, I had piano lessons when I was six, and 6 to 7, maybe a year or two. No, it wasn't super long before I was like, I don't like piano. Or maybe it was because well, I hung out a lot with my cousins, and my cousin, she was a much better piano player than me, where I was like, this is stupid. Yeah, no, I never played in like high school or middle school jazz band or anything like that. I just had um, my best friend since seventh grade. He played drums, and we were both at a public junior high, and we had both come from private elementary schools, so like we didn't know anybody, and uh, and I always referenced it like we were Beavis and Butthead, like we were hanging out on a wall, like while the other cool kids were playing, and they're like, "Hey, so you math class? What do you do?" I like playing Dungeons and Dragons and play drums. I'm like, oh, I like Dungeons and Dragons too, but I play guitar. We should start a band, and we did. And we would draw up giant stage plots that would be ridiculous. It, like a giant Iron Maiden wall of amplifiers, and we had like a ghoulish mascot for our band, like Eddie for Iron Maiden, and um, we're still friends to this day, 40 years later. But yeah, we played like it was the two of us playing like all through high school, um, and in bands, and we'd write originals. We'd play, cover our favorite songs from that we could play as best we could, from Metallica and Iron Maiden, Van Halen, and stuff of that, like I guess '80s metal and classic rock sort of stuff. And that's we played backyard high school keggers and stuff. That's kind of what where I started playing.
How do you go from, at least in your experience, something like that to, which I think is probably fairly common, at least if you're of a certain age. I don't know what it's like for people coming up in, as aspiring musicians today. So we might get to that. But how do you go from playing a backyard kegger or playing in the local club or bar scene to, again, in your experience, to then getting signed and touring and really kind of making that jump where it becomes a real job or career?
I don't think this is how it happens for kids anymore. From I don't even think, do kids even do backyard keggers anymore? Like, is that a thing? Like, is is do scenes out of right? Do scenes out of Dazed and Confused still happen?
Based on perhaps not just your history, but then also if you were talking to kids nowadays that were aspiring musicians, how much of your experience is relevant? How much of your mindset is relevant? Also, because you've had experiences outside of music and, a career outside of music, I suspect that that gives you a maybe a broader perspective or at least a different perspective from people who their entire career has been in music at, one level of success or another. And so that's really kind of where I'm ultimately going, is planted in what your experience is, then what things look like to you today and how you would not just think about music today or a career in music, but how you would talk to someone who's aspiring to that.
For us in my timeline and how it happened back then, we would go from playing house parties to build kind of a fan base. Um, Something that we did back then that not a lot of other bands did was we would have our friends that were girls or our girlfriends walk around with a clipboard and get everybody's emails. Um, and While we were playing. And then the next time we play, we shoot out an email blast to everybody, be like, "Hey, we're playing this party." Or and then if we were playing at a club and needed to sell tickets, "Hey, we're playing this club. Come on down. It's $7, and these are the other bands on the bills. Whatever." And so we were always building an email list of um, bands. Um, to try and grow what we were doing. Um, and while that's not the medium for today, I think success or growing your fan base happens in a similar style today. It's just it happens online versus having somebody walk around with a clipboard at a live show. You're probably like you're posting videos to YouTube or you're posting songs to SoundCloud, and then you kind of redirect them to your socials. Or if you're next level marketing band, now you redirect them to maybe a funnel, to send them into maybe merch or push into your Spotify. Depends on where you want to direct them. So the idea is the same, but the medium and how you go about getting people interested in your music and following you is that it's modernized.
Not to spend too much more time, of course, on what is a little bit of ancient history because a lot has changed. But I'm curious, About what time frame were you collecting email addresses? Because, I'm also wondering, you go far enough back and not a lot of people would have had email addresses.
It was definitely like AOL era, like mid 90s, early, late 90s. Um, so yeah, I guess we got signed to Columbia late 96. So it would have been like definitely mid 90s. We were doing that. And when we were uh, showcasing for record labels, they were like, "You guys have what? That's brilliant. We want that."
When I think about music today, and I'm a musician to the extent that almost nobody wants to listen to me play, but I enjoy sitting down and, just banging out something like comping on the piano. I can really only play chords. I can't do a lot of, melody lines or something, but I could sit down with my son. And I think it was yesterday, I was working on the riff from Sleep Now in the Fire from Rage Against the Machine with him. He's about to be 10. He's been playing guitar for 2 years. It's not particularly complicated, but he's young. And then he goes from that to just trying to get the strumming pattern on Come As You Are, Nirvana.
Yeah.
Anybody who listens to me is probably not going to want to do so for very long. That's about, my level of being a musician, perhaps. But it makes me happy. So that I state that because my understanding of being a musician, where people will pay you for it or the industry or whatever it only goes so far. And so I don't want to make too many assumptions, but my understanding of trying to make it as a musician nowadays is, labels don't have much of an interest in signing someone unless they're already sort of an influencer, content creator, whatever. They're already doing their own marketing and building an audience. And whether that's right or wrong, I think you really just said it, that you were already taking charge of a bit of that. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on ancient history, but was that intentional at the time, or was it just somebody had an idea and you guys thought, well, why not? We'll just see.
I want to say it was Ben's idea to start the mailing list, and all of us were like, "That's brilliant. Let's do it."
Okay. Yeah.
And then I think before we figured out, because we would get their addresses too, and
Mhm.
because like you said, I just remembered this. Like, you know what? We got their addresses too, and we would send postcards like before there was email en masse if they didn't have an email. So we did that as well. And I remember when we first got stickers for the band, we would all get in the car and drive around on like a Saturday afternoon and just tag like our bus stop benches and stop signs and just zebra head sticker. Bang.
You're reminding me, I wrote music for and led a small local rock band when I was in college, and it was really fun. I wouldn't say that we were particularly good by any means, but we enjoyed it and people would come to our shows and all that. But I would screen print shirts for the band because we could buy, plain old cotton t-shirts of different colors for $1 or something, maybe 50 cents. And then because I knew how to screen print and I could go to Kinko's and I could print out the things that you needed to print in order to do your own designs and so on. Each shirt was like $2 or $3. And we would throw out anywhere between 10 and 50 shirts per show. And then eventually it got to a point where in this smallish town, we would see bums walking around wearing our shirts. We'd see, the college kids. And it's not like they were everywhere, but there were enough people that had seen our name or logo or whatever it was that it started to get to be, it would come up that I was the guitarist or wrote music or whatever for this band. And somebody would go, "You're in that band?" Like there was this, the first inkling of fame, I guess. I don't know, where it felt like people are talking about me. And you're just reminding me of that. And we were nowhere near successful by any means.
That's funny. You saying that you saw a homeless person wearing your shirt reminded me of a story. We were in Japan, and we had already had a gold record too. We were there for a festival run. We're playing in the Chiba Marine Baseball Stadium in Tokyo, where the Yakult Swallows play. And it's after the festival. We'd already been to the bars. It's the middle of the night, and I'd go downstairs to the bottom of the hotel that's at Shibuya Crossing, which is, like the Times Square with the giant screen and the 8 crosswalks in there, in the middle of Tokyo. And I'm just outside having a cigarette. Well, I don't smoke anymore, but having a cigarette then, and a homeless guy goes walking by wearing a zebra head shirt. And I was like, oh, have we made it now? Is this what this means?
I do want to come back a little bit, but I'm going to jump ahead. You've been a real estate agent for 12-ish years now, something like that. Is that right?
That sounds pretty close. It was pretty shortly after I left Zebrahead that I got my license, because I only had one other job as an adult before Zebrahead. And it was, I started at that other job at 18 or 19, working in a warehouse for a secondary structural framing metal company. And then I'd moved into inside sales, and it was really the only place I had ever had a job before. And then when I left Zebrahead 20 years later, I was like, who am I? What am I going to do with my life? I dropped out of college for this, and thinking I would go back to college when this roller coaster would be over, thinking it was going to be over in a couple of years. But the ride, I never envisioned when Zebrahead got signed that I would be the one to call it quits before the universe would call it quits for me. And so when I finally left the circus, I was like, I don't really have any qualifications to do anything. What am I going to go do? And I looked into going back to college. I was like, whoa, college got really expensive in the last 20 years. I don't see myself doing that. Saw an ad for real estate agents wanted. I could probably do that in a week.
Part of what I was wondering about with real estate is coming from building an email list, whether it was really intentional or it was just an idea. It seems like that was a good experiment to try out. And, that was an experiment that proved true, basically. It worked. Are there things that you have applied now in your real estate, or if it's fair of me to put it this way, in your business career, whether it's building an email list or building an audience or something else?
Well, I guess 52-year-old me would say we had a CRM, not knowing it was a CRM back then. So, yeah, I guess in that sense, like building your funnel and your prospect pool, whether you're selling records, music, regardless of the widget, you need to figure out how to sell the widget. And there's a pipeline and a follow up and a from prospect to client stage of your sales. So it is. I suppose it did unknowingly translate into business now.
I guess when you started out as a real estate agent, were you conscious of that, or did you come around to eventually, 2 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, hey, I need to build a list. I need to fill out my CRM. I'm just wondering if it stuck with you, like you were aware of that sort of thing because you had experienced it in your music.
I don't think I put two and two together on that until I
Mhm.
switched from the mom and pop brokerage that I was first at, and it was very team oriented, to where I was kind of learning the business. Um, Started as just the uh, guy that you drive around with and open doors, show you to the house, called it a showing agent. And then as I got comfortable with like certain parts of the team that I was on, I would ask the team leader, I'm like, yo, I think I understand this. It's pretty easy. How about we move into like negotiations, contracts, um, and then contracts to close. And then you just kind of, I learned every aspect of it that way. And then eventually I, when I was done with splitting the pie up, so to speak, on a team, um, with the team, somebody else was prospecting. So they would just hand you the client. When I left that brokerage to go to Century 21, our brokerage, my broker here mm, doesn't really advocate for teams. He's like, why do you want to share the pie with somebody else? Just be your own agent. But you know, you got to be your own. You got to be an outdoor cat, not an indoor cat, is what he always says. Like you got to go hunt for yourself. And I don't think until I had to go prospect and hunt for myself that I realized, oh, I need some tools to make this happen.
That's really interesting because I coming into this conversation, I had also wondered what your experience was finding success as a member of a group and how much you might attribute some of that success to right time, right place, or persistence, hard work, having a dream versus, this was just the right mix of people in this band, and then which of those things maybe would have helped you be successful in any other field. And then, talking about being in the mom and pop sort of family environment versus now it sounds like you have a lot more control, but you're also a little bit more separated. So I hadn't, I had not thought so much about the question of where did your success in music come from and what might that look like today in your real estate career. But I suppose let's go back to the beginning. Do you feel like that you could attribute success that you had early in music to right time, right place, the group you were with, your hard work and dedication, or something else?
I would say all three of those things
Yeah.
played a huge part. What's the catchphrase here is luck happens when opportunity and hard work um, collide. I forget exactly how that goes, but it was definitely a matter of persistence with the original five of us. It was definitely a little lightning in the bottle with the original five of us. And then it was definitely a little bit of right place, right time with Offspring and No Doubt blowing up right before us and bringing a lot of industry eyes to the area that we grew up in, um, to help us get noticed, I suppose. So yeah, I would say that our early successes were um, a lot of drops in the bucket from a lot of different um, types. Like it was a cumulative effort of just everything, all of those things happening at once. And if you'd have taken one of those things out, would have happened for us? I don't know. And it's I it's it'd be interesting to put that in the time machine and play that out if differently. Um, but yeah, I would say all three of those things played a heavy part into our early success on that. I think that translates to any endeavor that somebody wants to take on. success isn't like a singular transaction that you make. Like, I'm going to make this one phone call to a FISBO, and right there on the spot, they're going to list their house with me. That's not the way that works. You're not going to go. You're not going to go to the library and talk to a girl at random and get married on the way out. Like, there's, you know, there's a lot of short gains that get you to your destination of success. It's not there's hardly one thing. There might be one big thing that it might kickstart it or get you across the finish line, but it's a constant deposit at the bank of effort and hard work that is going to make you successful in whatever industry, whatever um, you're trying to achieve.
The older that I have gotten, the more I have started to recognize the failings on my own journey of not putting in the hard work. And that's not to say that I think that you should always stick with something, because plenty of things you're just never going to be world class at, because, you can't run as fast as Usain Bolt, or, you don't have as beautiful of a voice as Adele, or I don't know, pick any specialty. But there are some things where for you actually could be amazing, if not world class. And when I say you, I mean listener, any person out there. And in my own journey, I look back and I think, well, if I had realized where I was going on a positive or negative sort of trajectory, if I had just been willing to work hard at it, if, and I'm not saying it in terms of like regrets as much as I look at my children nowadays, and I coach a club soccer team and I try and talk to the boys about things like this, that not everything comes down to just working hard, but it's really hard to succeed if you're not willing to work hard, and then get into the right group of people and combine that with right time, right place, and any number of other things.
You don't have to be the best at something to be successful at it. Like, is Mick Jagger the best singer? Not really, but the Rolling Stones are really good. Is the Big Mac the best burger? Absolutely not. They sell a lot of those things. um, and I see it all the time in sports, where there's just a tremendously gifted athlete who's lazy AF, and then there's a moderately gifted athlete who is persistent and in the watching film in the weight room, just there all day. And that guy, 9 times out of 10, is going to beat the lazy talented guy who's more talented than him. And I think that translates to business and uh, just about anything else in life. Like, if the harder you work at it, like you said, the harder you work, the luckier you're going to be.
Do you think that if it hadn't been guitar or music, that, you, because of the way you were raised, just your own personality, do you think that some of those things that about you rather than your environment would have contributed, and the people you're around and all that, do you think those things about you rather than those things would have contributed to you finding success had it not been guitar and music?
I think to a certain point, um, I think because I love guitar and making music so much more that I love doing just about anything else. Um, it makes it easier to have that drive to like constantly improve, constantly learn new things, constantly figure out, like, what am I missing? The example, like the first two records for me, I was playing parts that I was hearing in my head. But then when I would hear them on the record, it was like, it doesn't sound the way I want it to sound on the record. And switching from Playmate to MSCB, I did a deep dive on just different amps, different cabinet boxes, different speakers, the mic pre's that mic up the cabinets, like everything in the signal chain that went from my brain and my fingers to the other end of back then it was tape, but to get to the tape and then come back out on the CD, like I just went deep dive on learning everything about the process in the middle and where was I losing the translation of what I wanted to hear in my mind. And I think like I don't know if I would do that for another industry where like I just loved every bit everything about the process. Like, oh, Neve 1073, let's learn about that. I don't know if I was in finance, I'd be like, let's see, 1031 exchange.
I wonder though if you had found that finance somehow was your thing, like let's just imagine that you were a version of Warren Buffett and you read one of these biographies of him and he was selling things and then buying stocks when he was, I don't know, 12 or whatever the age was. I wonder if for you, you would have found some success here or there, and that would have then helped to fuel your passion. And I am wondering about that in particular because, the whole thing about, well, follow your passion or something of that nature versus people who might say it's hard to become passionate about something if you don't work hard enough to get good at it in the first place because you have to see some success before you start to often feel good about the thing. And once you feel good, then there's this reinforcement mechanism that occurs.
Kind of spirals from there.
Exactly. And so we like you referenced the time machine, right? Like to go back and say, well, let's take the guitar away and let's make it that you were selling. I talked to this gentleman, Ryan Hogan, who his entrepreneurial career started in, I think he said third grade. He was selling creepy crawlers.
That's a Wayback Machine reference.
His story is just so interesting.
Can I pause on the creepy crawler thought for a second? So I forget what boy came in, like a candy or something. My 5-year-old, it was probably Halloween last year, but like there's an egg or something. There was a wacky wall walker in there. And he's like, I don't know what is this, Dad? I'm like, oh, check this out. And I threw it on the ceiling and it stuck and it hung there just like one of those, like half of it came down. So it was just sitting on the ceiling like that for like a month. My wife was so mad at me. Will you get that thing off the ceiling? Like, I can't reach it. Get a broom or something. It's going to leave a stain. I don't know what it is. Every day we look at it, me and the 5-year-old be like, oh, it's still there, Dad.
I think you and I have been through plenty of similar experiences. I do it with all three of my children, but in particular with my son. I think it's maybe a male-female dynamic thing where he just finds some things fascinating that I do too, because I can go back to being a 9, 10-year-old, but my wife doesn't always find them nearly as funny.
Yeah, I wonder all the time what my wife is thinking. Like, did you know what you're getting into?
Part of what I was wondering about, work ethic and all of that, and maybe would you have found success is you've done other things and music is being a musician is who you are. And, but you're not doing that 24/7 exactly, at least not performing, writing music. So do you feel like you have brought a similar work ethic, maybe not the same, but a similar work ethic or passion, if I can put it that way, to the other things you've done in your life, whether it's real estate or being a parent or any other thing. I think I don't know if, do you produce music now? I believe you've been a producer in the past, right? Like any other thing like that.
Yeah, I've produced a couple friends' bands, records. I produce our current, my current band, the Bourbon Brothers Band stuff. Um, all of us, the five of us, would get co-producer credits on the Zebrahead Records post Howard Benson. And then um, I had second engineer credits on everything after Howard too when I had bought my first Pro Tools rig. Um, so I enjoy producing too. When left Zebrahead, I was maybe trying to look into being like a full-time producer. And what I quickly realized was that I enjoy making my own music a lot more than making other people's music. Like I enjoy helping them make it, but at the same time, I'm like, I really respect Howard a lot more after I produced somebody else's record. Because there were times in the studio when on those first two records where the five of us wouldn't agree on something. And so it would be difficult to move forward. And then Howard would pick a side to just move the ball forward and get the project done. And if he didn't pick your side, whoever's side he didn't pick, that person or those people in the band would be angry at Howard about it. And so being the like head coach versus the quarterback is kind of a different scenario. And as the quarterback, when you don't get the play called that you wanted, you're pissed about it. But at the same time, like if you're not, sometimes there's compromise that you don't want to make when you're the artist. But when you're the producer, you kind of have the bigger picture because it's not your name on the spine on the album. And you're like, focus. We have deadlines. Let's go. And to the artist, there's no deadline. It's my way until I get it where I want, which isn't always financially possible.
So you've gone through, some learning experiences, I guess, going from being the artist to then helping other people produce their music. And so really what I'm wondering is those things that you've taken with you that apply across all the different things that you might do. So let me give you a scenario. So I referenced my son playing guitar. For his age, he's really quite good. There are a ton of kids that are virtuoso, and that is not him.
I don't ever felt that I was virtuoso. And I had friends that I always thought were better than me at guitar. I would even say that Dan, who replaced me in Zebrahead, is a more technically proficient, better guitar player than me. But like I pointed back for, is Mick Jagger the best singer? Is Keith Richards
Right.
the best guitarist?
Yes.
If you put David Gilmour up against Yngwie Malmsteen on who's a better guitar player, like, yeah, Yngwie is rushingly virtuoso. But David Gilmour plays slow AF, but just some of the coolest licks you might ever hear. So, I mean, like your son could be like, write the most amazing song ever that's inspires somebody to pick up a guitar because they can play it versus there's a handful of people that are going to play what Yngwie can play. When you learn to play guitar, you're like, oh man, I'm going to learn that solo that comes from the numb. Oh, I finally got, it's accessible.
Well, and that's part of what I'm wondering too, is, um, you, how much can you transfer persistence And I think we've said it already, persistence, hard work, all of these things transfer across almost anything you're going to do. You know, you and I are both parents, and I think that there are things that we've learned that everybody learns, right? At least hopefully you learn it as you're going through your journey as a parent. And yet there are also a lot of things that we fail to learn, you know, you or I or the next person, you know, dear listener here, fails to learn because we didn't have the right mindset. We weren't looking in the right place. We didn't have the right mentor, something of that nature. And so as I talked to my son and he, you know, he's good, but it's not like somebody would look at him and go, wow, you should be a guitarist. They would just hear him and go, wow, he's pretty good for a 9-year old, soon to be 10-year old. But if he loves it, if he can imagine being willing to do the work, you know, because it's going to be hard. I think you know that if you want to be really great at something, you're going to have to do a lot of stuff that's often not fun. You know, you hear these like 10,000 hour story things, right? That the top musicians in the New York Philharmonic or whatever it is, the first chair typically practices less than the second chair. And they say that they enjoy their practice much less. It's often because the things that they choose to deliberately, they're deliberate about working on, are the things that they're not good at. So in the moment, it's not as enjoyable. But what they get out of it is knowing that if they work hard, they can become the person that they want to be, or they can be up on stage and everybody's clapping because they were able to play the thing that the second chair wasn't even willing to work hard on. And so my son, talking to him about if no matter how good you are or not, if you really love it, then I think it will show up in you being willing to work hard. And I'm guessing that played in at some point in your music, but then also if it did, has it also shown up in, you know, how you've approached your real estate career or other things that you've done?
I think some like universal recipes for success that's got to happen. Whether it's music, real estate, being a doctor, being a finance bro, being whatever your endeavor is. You're constantly learning and trying to get better from it. Otherwise, you're just gonna be static. You're stuck where you're at. And I guess back to like your son maybe not being a virtuoso. Maybe he's not a virtuoso yet. Maybe he gets better.
Right? Yeah.
Maybe a lot of times it's not about being the best at something, but being the best version of you at that something.
I think that is, you know, something that, like I was saying, looking back at your own journey and thinking, oh, I could have worked harder here or made a different decision or whatever. It's plenty of people have heard this. If you've heard me speak before, that I didn't really learn the value of hard work until probably around age 30. And, you know, I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't have met my wife. I wouldn't have my children, all of these things, if I had learned the value of hard work when I was 12 or 20 or whatever it was. But, you know, this is sort of related to, you've heard the statement before that, you know, the generals are always fighting the last war. And so you learn lessons, and then often what you learned from your experience, you want to pass on to your children, even though those might not be the challenges or the struggles that they face. And so I don't want to overemphasize it, certainly, but there are things I think you used the word universal. I think that there are things that it sure seems to me like it is universally valuable to be deliberate about what you spend your time on. When you do spend your time on something, to work really hard at it, to follow through on your commitments and any, you know, number of other things. And I suspect that that played a role. I mean, you sort of said it was in the mix. Do you approach either, you know, the Bourbon Brothers band activities in a similar manner, the same kind of dedication? Do you approach your real estate career? I think I've heard you say before you play like beer league hockey or something. Do you approach other activities in your life with a similar kind of commitment or passion?
For the business stuff side of Bourbon Brothers real estate, yes. Beer league hockey, no, I just show up, hang out with the boys, try not to get hurt, and then go drink beers in the parking lot afterwards.
I'm really curious. I think I mentioned it earlier in one way or another, but you can take this either direction you want to go. Either, how do you talk to your own kids, or how would you talk to just young people generally today about like how they should think about finding the things that they love, finding a career, working hard, all those things. We've talked about those things. Like, how do you try to parent your kids, or what advice do you give to people to try and find, the kind of success that you have had at times? And, or Greg, you can handle one or both here. If you were talking to someone that really wanted to chase the dream of music, whether they want to be, the biggest selling artist in the world, though, if anyone here listens to Rick Beato, we're never going to see platinum selling artists again.
It's another Atlanta guy.
Yep, exactly. And, so either generally, thinking about your future, working hard, kids, all of that, and or you want to go into music based on my experience, here's the advice that I would give you. What do you think, or what do you say?
I'll start with my kids, whether it's music, because my daughter has tried to play several instruments, to which she thought she would like, and then maybe like we talked about earlier, she didn't get that immediate reward of being like good at it, like super quick. And so it kind of faded. And I always encourage my kids to try everything. Just don't know if you like it? Try it. What? That looks weird, Dad. I don't want to eat it. How you gonna know? It could be delicious. You put it in your mouth, chew it. Go for it. Well, I don't know if I'm gonna like doing X, Y, or Z. Go for it. Try it. Try it twice. Make sure you didn't screw it up the first time, and you really are gonna like it. Don't don't come into things with a bunch of preconditions, a bunch of assumptions on how things are going to be before you've tried it yourself. And give everything a fair shot. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. That's cool. But and until you try it, I don't know, you don't know yet. Like, give it your best, give it your all. If it doesn't work out, you don't like it, or it's not your jam, like, that's cool too. Just try something else. And until you get there. Or maybe you try it, you're terrible at it, but you really enjoy doing it. That's cool too. As long as you're having fun, especially at their ages, 14 and 5, like, you don't have to be great at it. At the end of the day, like, you're there's no scouts at the T-ball game. there's there well, there might be college scouts at my daughter's club swim team, but there probably isn't. And as long as you're having fun, as long as she's having fun at her swim club, like, I don't care where you finish in the race. I want you to finish. I want you to be enjoying yourself and having fun being a kid. And hanging with your friends and having experiences that you might miss out on otherwise if you come with a bunch of preconceived notions on how things are going to be. Um, so that's how I am with my kids, and I suppose that's how I am in my life. Maybe to my detriment in my 20s and 30s when I would try anything twice. But, um, it's um, you don't know if you don't give everything a fair shake and go for it. If you don't like it, that's cool. But you'll never know if you've got a bunch of walls up and um, bunch of ideas of what it is when you don't really know what it is. Uh, so I guess that's my life lesson to my kids that I want to pass on. For music, I don't remember if I read it in an article or if I saw it in a reel, but it was an interview with Willie Nelson, and they were asking him, "Well, how did you make it?" And I remember him saying, "Well, I could tell you how I made it, but to be quite honest, I was the only one that walked through that door, and the door's closed, and how you're going to make it is going to be different." And I was like, oh, that's an interesting thought, especially like from his generation to my generation and my generation to the next generation. Like so much has changed within the landscape of the music industry, and technology and what you can and can't do for yourself. And if you want to be on a major label, what's expected of you for them to even like look at you to be on a major label? And do you even want to be on a major label? Like, is that the best thing for you? Um, like I have a friend in town who's a entertainment. Well, he's a lawyer of many hats, but one of his many hats is entertainment law. And um, I don't know if he still is, but he used to represent this huge YouTube kid called Matty B, and he was like one of the top 10 YouTubers on the platform, right? And I was like, he's like a Justin Bieber at the time. He's a good looking 13-year-old white kid from Alpharetta playing drums and rapping. And I was like, yo, how is like Disney not knocking on your door every day or some label? He's like, they are. I was like, what? Why aren't you on? Why isn't he on Disney Channel yet then? He's like, he would make less money working at Disney than what his YouTube channel makes. I'm like, why? I'm like, oh, wow. That like the you can be successful just without um some sort of major backing or a machine behind you these days. That said, you have to be the machine these days if that's where you're at. And success means different things to different people. Um, some people are going to view success as a musician as albums sold or money made or maybe streams or maybe it's happiness and artistic integrity. Like there's a lot of different versions of what success looks like. Like, this was definitely a reel I saw of John Mayer talking to kids at Berkeley where he went to school. And he was talking to the crowd. He's like, success means everything. It's something different to everyone. I've got friends that sold 2 million records and they thought they were losers and it was a complete flop. I've got other friends who sold 2 million records and they thought they were the biggest thing on the planet. Like all their childhood dreams came true. And so you can take the same thing to two different people and it it can strike them entirely different on how they viewed their version of success. Um, but I would say whatever that version of success is for you as a musician, you need to embrace that as your destination.
So you're still deeply involved in music. I think it was maybe before we started recording that you said you're sometimes playing about 6 times a week. Am I recalling that correctly?
On a really busy week, yeah, we'll be there out there 6 days. This week is a light week. We got 3 days.
Your destination, I think, for some time was something related to music. I don't know if it was, you know, become the best version of myself as a guitarist I can be, if it was sell a bigger album, whatever, but it was in that field. When you stepped away from it being full time, did you experience a any feeling of loss?
100%.
But you had other motivating factors.
I had thought about leaving Zebrahead for probably 2 years before I actually pulled the trigger on it. And I still love the guys. I'm of the three expats in the band, I'm the only one that still talks to you know, the band. They actually just rolled to town in Atlanta. It was a blast to go hang with them and be at the show and just see what it is they're doing without me, I guess. And I still talk to the expat guys too. So not to be like play both sides of the fence, but I'm still friends with everybody. I think at least that's in my opinion. Maybe they're not. They might see it differently, but I still think as of everybody that I played with in that band as my friend. And I know I had talked to Justin about it before, and he had kind of mentioned that like, oh, I don't want to. It's like I'm not looking at my ex-wife's Facebook page to see what she's up to. It's just weird. I don't want to like it's awkward. And I guess I think of it more as like, oh, I want to see my kid went off to college. I want to see how they grew up versus, it's just a different perspective on it. Um, but yeah, but it was becoming hard for me to be away from home that long. I still loved playing shows. I still loved hanging with friends in different cities that we had made over the years. Still love being in the studio, but uh, even like to write and pre-production, like I would have to fly out of Atlanta back to California, and even that was being away from home. So it was like being on tour when I wasn't on tour. So like I would be away from home more than the other guys um, because of me moving to Atlanta, and it was just it was becoming difficult to be a dad. Like I had it, I I got really used to missing anniversaries, birthdays, friends' weddings, and in the almost 20 years of touring. But when I had my daughter and I was missing like first steps, first words, it really it was really difficult for me. And then I think you throw in on top like all of the poor ways to deal with um unhappiness on tour is not healthy for your soul. So like I just made a decision that I it was time. And then when I left, it's like that scene in Zoolander where he's like looking at the puddle after he leaves the um what uh uh um model whatever convention, and it's like, who am I? It was really hard for me to my identity was so wrapped into I'm Greg from Zebrahead, and I didn't know what was next for me. I kind of touched on it earlier. I was like, oh, when we got signed, I just thought, you know, we'd make an album or two, we'd get dropped, and then I go back to school. And the ride really never ended. And then the world kind of passed me by. I felt a little Rip Van Winkle, like I was still this 25-year-old, and I got dropped off into this 43-year-old body, and the world just passed me by. Where I'm like, oh, now what do I do? I'm still a musician though, and I didn't know how to handle that. Um, I didn't. It felt like not that I've ever been to war or want to equate it to like something like that, but I felt like a limb was gone or something. Well, I'm like, what do I do? And I had friends that were telling me, like, well, why don't you start another band at home? I'm like, so that I could do what? Play a bunch of rock songs with the endeavor of the destination going back on tour? I just left that. That sounds like a terrible thing that I had to go do and start from zero that I just did when I know the end result isn't going to necessarily make me happy anymore. Like, that's weird. And yeah, I was playing, I still play in a beer league, hockey league. And one of the other guys in warm-ups skate by. I'm like, are you singing Sinatra under your helmet in warm-ups? He's no. Well, yeah, you were. And he's like, okay, maybe I was. Hey, you want to come over and jam some standards sometime? Oh yeah, that'd be fun. And I think part of what made it okay for me to start playing again, because I didn't touch the guitar for a couple of years really after I left the band, because I was like, what for? What am I doing? Um, it was fun to pick up my guitar again. It was fun to play in an entirely new, different genre, to where like playing guitar was new. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm hanging out with my old friend. I'm like, oh, there's all these things that happen in jazz and in standard that just don't happen in rock really, and unless you're playing like Steely Dan songs or something. Um, to make it new and interesting again, and um, something like the artistic um, things of monotony. For like when you're in a rock band, you you play the same song every night. You can play the same solo every night. It's like this. It's structured the same way. Like you're trying to create it like the record is, recreate it as it was on the record almost identically, every time. Whereas in most jazz bands aren't going to play it the same way twice and intentionally. Um, it's super fun for me to like. We play 3 hour sets usually. There's like three songs that I have that it's a scripted solo. It gets to the point in the solo, and I can play anything I want, and I'm not going to play the same thing tomorrow. And that is awesome to me. Like, I love that there's no rules like that, expectations. Um, we don't even make set lists. We start with Fly Me to the Moon and we end with My Way. Everything else in between those 3 hours is like kind of feel the room out, you know. If the wedding wants to dance, cool. If the corporate party wants us to be background music, cool. We change our pitch of what the next call is going to be like. All right, Stu Chet Baker. So it's fun to have music be new again to me, and have it be new almost every night again too, where you're like, all right, the song's the same, but when it gets to my solo, I'm like, it's gonna be a minute and a half where I'm just noodling. Which is fun again. So it was, yeah, it was definitely like hard for me when I left. Like I didn't know. I felt like I lost my identity. Um, Especially where I was a musician, and after I got my real estate license, and you'd be doing like marketing CE classes or something, my brain would immediately always translate every marketing bit that they would tell me on, say, how to run meta ads or something. My brain would always go, oh, how would I do that for music? Oh, how would I didn't even have music to market. My brain would always think of it as music first before I thought of it in terms of, oh, how do I expand, prospecting for real estate? Like, my brain would always go to music first. So it was, yeah, it was definitely like uh, there was definitely something missing. Like, how do I move on from this? Before I, I guess, refound myself and trying to find a balance of all of it, like being a dad, being a musician, uh, running a business, and then do all those things at the same time.
We were talking about earlier having a destination in mind. And I think if I'm hearing you clearly, you got off that road and you had, I think, a destination in a sense, in that you had some other priorities, being more present as a father. And, you said you got used to missing anniversaries and weddings and whatever else. And so I don't know if I could say it was the same kind of destination or not, but put it simply, you had other priorities. And my guess would be that this would probably play in when you're advising your children or you're advising people generally. Hey, if you're going to go into music or if you're going to chase that dream, probably getting accustomed to change, or being, maybe even if you're not accustomed to it, being willing to change at times because your priorities will change. And that's going to change how you see yourself, how you define yourself. And I think I hear underneath this that that was a really difficult struggle. And yet, hopefully, you have come to a point now after some years where you're comfortable with where you've ended up, at least as of right now. I mean, you're still on a journey, of course.
Yeah, honestly, I had never really thought about it in that way. Thank you for the um, another perspective on it. Like, yeah, I guess my destination really did change, and um, the I guess the course correction um was something that I guess wasn't expecting in life, and took me a hot minute to kind of figure out how to make that um that different path, or to get to the different uh, destination. Uh, but yeah, that's a cool perspective to. Thanks.
Greg, I will now bring it around to a close. You've been really generous with your time. I think, let's see, uh, counting the time before we started recording, I've kept you for almost 2 hours. So thank you for that. The two things that I'll end with are, where would you direct people, whether it's to quote unquote connect, as the kids say nowadays, or it's to learn more, it's to find out about investing in property with you, or to check out, I think you told me at one point there's something on the horizon, or your band? Where would you direct people? Where do you want them to look to connect or otherwise? And then, do you have any final words of wisdom or things you would want to leave people with? And then we'll wrap it there.
If you want to find me, you can find me online at gregbergdorf.com. You can find me on Instagram at Greg_Bergdorf. If you want to follow the Bourbon Brothers, that's bourbonbrothersband.com. And I think there's a few variations of that we have. Um, if you want to see what the old guys are up to, you can still check in on zebrahead.com. There's is a link on gregbergdorf.com if for real estate. If you're looking for a house in Atlanta, you're here in Atlanta, I'd love to help you out with that. It's a Century 21 agent, and we have offices all over the world. So if you're in Indiana or Munich, Germany, and you need a referral for a great agent, I can help you out with that. Or if you're looking to purchase an investment property, maybe 10% ROI while your property appreciates in value here in Atlanta, I can help you find that as well. Um, I'm also wrapping up a project I'm pretty excited about, where I am doing the sound design and composer for an independent movie. We've been in a few indie film festivals, and we've won some things. Movie's called Another Day. So keep an eye out for that. We haven't really started the social media PR campaign yet, but that'll be coming shortly, and that's a lot of fun too. And hopefully we'll have a Bourbon Brothers record out not too long either.
Are there things that you would want to leave people with? It could be on anything. It could be related to music, your career, general outlook before we wrap this.
We touched a lot on like work ethic, making small deposits, and being consistent for success. But I think something that gets I tell my wife this all the time, who is an undeniable baller, um, uh, lawyer, MBA, and has been working on a startup for the last 5 years. And sometimes she gets really frustrated with how fast or the pace of growth for her startup. And I have to remind her all the time, like, babe, enjoy the ride, like enjoy the journey. Like the it's partially about the destination, but if if you're if it's a miserable bumpy ride the entire time, like there's gonna be some turbulence on your flight. Like embrace it, love it, like embrace the journey, and um, so I would tell people that too. Like there's gonna be good times, there's gonna be bad times while you're working towards your goal, and just suck it all in and enjoy how that process plays out. If you're not enjoying it, it's going to be difficult to be successful at it.
I forget how I put it earlier, but I was really happy when you responded. I didn't know what to expect. You've done a lot of things in your life, but I really only knew you from your music and then following, some of the social media and all that. So the fact that we got some time to speak here was awesome. Plus, we have a little bit of just very minor connections having lived in the same area and all that. So thank you for being here, Greg. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.